And we're back and ready for another Shacknews Game of the Year deliberation. This time around, we're talking best PS5 game of 2022. And man, there were quite a few decent PS5 games, but there are a couple that really stood out this year in particular. And it looks like we've got us a list to go through. What do y'all say? Is everybody pumped?
Pumped.
Yeah.
If you want, I'll kick it off.
Go right ahead, Bill.
This came out earlier this year, and it may come as a shock given, we obviously have a PS5 game that came out much more recently that I think a lot of people are high on. But my vote for the best PS5 game for 2022 is going to be Horizon Forbidden West. In terms of, listen, I love God of War, but that game was on a grand scale in a giant open world, and visually, I thought it was striking. It was beautiful. I thought that it really did a great job of showcasing the PS5 at, arguably the best job of showcasing the PS5 for me. I don't think that doing open worlds is very easy, and especially that could be a challenge on a console, on a size where you can quite literally fly around on that scale, and being able to move like that and being able to take in the entire world and see those breathtaking visuals. But not just that, the gameplay was out of this world good, very inventive. I loved being able to play it the way that I wanted to play it, crafting the character that I wanted, using the skills that I wanted. Did I want to ambush? Did I want to be in your face, dodging and rolling and trying to fight? So it appealed to no matter what type of player you were, you could do that. Now, I'm a stealth guy, Blake. I know you're not the same. But I'm a stealth guy, so I was using all the stealth mechanics and the traps that I possibly could, and getting in there and getting out without being seen, and it just really let me dig into that style of play that I love. And again, it's still the most beautiful PS5 game that I've played yet.
I love that you brought up gameplay styles in that game, because I was just talking to my brother last night, and he and I have extremely different styles from even what you said about like stealth, like the silent kills and long shot bow. I'm a beastmaster in that game. I like being able to override the machines and turn them to my side as quickly as possible, and being able to ride larger and angrier machines. Whereas my bro, he loved the first game. He hasn't played the second one, and he was asking, and I was telling him about the gadgets in the game. He loves traps like the tripcaster, the landmines, the bombs, and he got so freaking excited when I told him there's an entire skill tree dedicated specifically to traps and trap weapons.
The one thing that game did really well too, just to add on, because I'm glad, like I mentioned that you could fly, and this isn't something that necessarily is an issue with Horizon Forbidden West. I think it's this with all games that are on a grand scale. There hits a point when you're like, you know what, I'm going to fast travel over here, because it's a long walk. Like I'm doing a quest way across the map, and I'm like 60 hours in, and I'm just going to fast travel. And that's why fast travel exists. And of course you can fast travel, but they introduced flying at a time in the game when instead of fast traveling, I now had a new and more interesting and highly satisfying way to traverse. The world was fresh again. I just spent X amount of time, I don't know how long it was, walking, riding on the ground, like from that ground level, looking at everything. And now suddenly I was able to see the world from an entirely different perspective that I didn't have before. And it was like a brand new world to explore from the sky. And it was just the pacing of that and the timing of that introduction, just instead of feeling like, oh man, like that's a long way, I'm going to fast travel, I was like, there's no way I'm fast traveling. I'm definitely going to fly, because you're like, what's that way over there? And now you have to, kind of squirrel, you're headed over there. So I thought that was one thing that really stood out to me was it's not just that you can fly, it's how it reinvents the open world. And I know it's not about open world, but for me, that was like a really big thing that made it like way up on my list of best PS5 games that I've played.
Man, Yeah, I think for me, like, it's just a visually striking environment, much more so than I would say, God of War is another contender here. Let's be honest, but like what the world that they have in Horizon Forbidden West is much more aesthetically appealing to me, and also it takes place like in the Bay Area, and not enough games take place in the Bay Area. And if I want more games to take place there, I need to get behind them. Yeah, and also giant robots. I'm always in for anything involving giant robots, personally. Yeah,
Also got a good color
just
palette. I'm lucky that I played it last night before the stipulations a little bit. Like it's I'm used to dystopian worlds like being like, dystopian. But this is a dystopian world that has like a ton of color, like just vibrant like pinks and blues and yellows and like reds, and it has so much color for a post-apocalyptic game, and I really like that. It's a good color theory, good color spectrum.
yeah,
With it being
yeah.
on PS5 too, the integration with the DualSense controller is really, really good when you're like pulling the bow back. I was really impressed by it.
There you go. Well, it seems to be a good nomination there, Bill. Why don't we keep moving on down the line? Who's got their nomination ready to go?
Make mine. I was initially skeptical of The Last of Us Part 1 when it was announced. It was becoming a running gag. Sony releases a new console, Sony re-releases The Last of Us. I played it in 2013. It's been one of my favorite games of all time since. I played the remastered edition on PS4, and I thought, well, here we go again. But then Naughty Dog started releasing videos detailing how they rebuilt this game from the ground up. Narratively, it is the same, and I do feel it goes toe to toe. The narrative goes toe to toe with any game released this year and wins handily. But just the amount of effort they put into this remake, this game is just astounding. I think it is the most visually impressive game, one of the most visually impressive games I've played ever. Definitely this year. It really feels like a new game in the AI behavior, in the little changes they made to the visuals of certain locations, in the tactics you have at your disposal. I've played this game through so many times on so many different consoles. This is the apotheosis of The Last of Us Part 1. This, I feel, is what they always wanted this game to be. It is fantastic. I think there are a lot of great games this year, especially on PS5, but The Last of Us Part 1 is the most fun I had playing a PS5 game this year, and it's a foundation of a 9-year-old game, but it's just still incredible.
Yeah, and like having done the review for that, I was able. One of the projects I set out to do was put like some of the scenes side by side because I have Last of Us Remastered still on my setup.
Same.
So, and just like that first scene, there was something that stood out to me so vividly as far as just like how far they've come in their graphic design. Joel and his brother and daughter are driving down a country road to get away, and they drive by a burning farmhouse.
Yeah.
And even in the remastered version, which I think came out in 2014
Correct.
or 15, if I'm not correct.
14.
It's kind of like, by today's standards, a static burning animation, and the house doesn't actually like the house is on fire, but it's just like it's just a house model with a burning effect on it. And it's a very good house model with a very good burning effect on it. But in The Last of Us Part 1, when you drive by that same house, the plumes of smoke are coming out of it. The fire is actually moving in a realistic way. Pieces of the house are falling apart and crumbling as you drive by. And just like the sheer amount of detail that was put into even that one thing is present throughout the rest of the game. It's so cool how much they improved upon every little inch of what you see throughout The Last of Us.
It's a remake in the purest sense of the word. We've seen remakes like Resident Evil 2 and 3, which took the spirit of their original games and transplanted it into a new body. This is the same game, but everything looks, feels, and sounds so much better. And TJ, I knew you were going to mention that scene at the beginning because it was very striking to me as well. And if you go forward a few minutes, there's a car that drives out of control into a gas station, and there's this huge explosion. The fire there is just incredible. My heart always races during that scene, especially since I know what's coming. And in the Last of Us Part 1, I was even more emotionally invested than ever. That game is just phenomenal. Like, it is just phenomenal craftsmanship and just still a work of art.
David, I haven't played through the entire game, so I kind of want to. There's something that I believe I've heard a few times that I'm hoping you can elaborate on because you touched on the AI. Um,
Oh yeah, yeah.
so if I'm to understand it correctly, like the AI is rebuilt, and I don't know, like if my understanding is correct, it's like groundbreakingly different game in terms of how you play and how the AI responds. Like a lot of people who are like, well, you're playing the same game. And I think maybe the AI is part of the reason why that's not necessarily true, other than the narrative. But am
Yeah.
I wrong in that, or am I right in that?
No, you're correct. So, like TJ said, in remastered, that was the same game. They just touched up the graphics for what they could on the PS4 hardware. So, the enemies, the enemy AI, especially for the humans, is a lot smarter in this game. You definitely have to be more tactical when approaching them, and you always did. But there was something that was kind of suspension that would break your suspension of disbelief in the original game and in remastered. The companion AI would kind of just get like spooked and start running out from cover, like right in front of enemies. And it wouldn't be fair if the enemies could see that. So it never counted against you, but it did take you out of the moment because it's like, hey, this is really tense. And you're just running around like an idiot in front of these guards, right? In this, that does not happen. The AI behaves just as you do. You're in this tense moment, it's do or die, and it's going to hide with you. The AI is also a lot smarter about like if you're out, like if you pop up from cover and attack, it takes that as a signal like, oh, okay, we're doing this, and it's with you. But if you're just running around hiding, moving from cover to cover, it's like, okay, we're doing this, I'm with you. Because Bill, I'm a stealth guy too. The Last of Us is one of my favorite stealth games and survival horror games ever. Like everything about this game, that's why I say it's a remake in the purest sense of the word. It's not like, Resident Evil 2, which was great, but different in a lot of ways than its original form. This is the same story, the same characters, but everything technical has been completely rebuilt to result in just one of the finest piece of video game works ever.
Yeah, and same with enemies on that AI part too. If you stay trained on an enemy with your gun, they won't poke out from behind cover very quickly. And in fact, the other enemies will move around you and start to flank you if you stay trained on the one.
And also just a small thing, this is kind of true across the board for games on Series X and PS5. But one of the biggest problems with The Last of Us, including on remastered on PS4, the loading times were just abysmal. You could really tell that the PS3 was like a year past its expiration date at that point. This on PS5, you're back reloaded in seconds. So if you die or you want to try something again, you can do that. The unlocks are great too. I haven't even mentioned those. There are built-in cheat codes. There are all sorts of graphical filters. You can even turn it into like an 8-bit style game, which is pretty cool. The character models, when you unlock those, it just looks like they took like 8K photographs of real people. Like you can zoom in close and just get an incredible amount of detail. But yeah, I cannot say enough good things about this game. It's just phenomenal.
All right. Well, there you go. A strong case made for your nomination there. Who is going up next? Who has a nomination? Sam
I'd love
raises his
to
hand.
squeak one in real quick, just real quick. I gotta throw out a nomination for Elden Ring. If you've got a PlayStation 5 and you do not have Elden Ring in your library, you are doing yourself a disservice. That game, came out early in the year, so people may have forgotten about it by now, but that sent shockwaves. Shockwaves through the gaming sphere. Like, I mean, I know there's a lot of great games out on the PS5, and all of them are deserved, but
I'm sure it's a
should definitely be considered.
very pretty game. I would have liked to have seen more of it, but there were giant monsters in my way.
I agree with
at every
Sam on
point.
this. The only reason I didn't nominate it in this category is because I feel like we talked about it a lot in the Xbox Series X, but it can't be overstated how great the current gen console versions of Elden Ring really do play on PS5 and Series X. Like just incredible work.
Just something to note with that too. I think this is where my experience with Elden Ring is actually the most relevant. Is that I would argue that Elden Ring is a better version. When I played it, I don't know about updates in the last 6 months or patches, but when I played it, Elden Ring was a better version of a game on the PS5 than it was on PC. Now, you can say that about PlayStation exclusives sometimes, that they're better on PS5 than they are somewhere else. But it's not very often that you find a game that releases across multiple platforms and you're like, you know, I understand Xbox Series X is in the same boat, but since we're talking about PS5,
Yeah.
I would tell someone play it on PS5, don't play it on PC. So
Well,
that's pretty rare.
I'm with you. Like my default is usually if this is multi-platform, like I have a high-end gaming PC, I go PC. With this, I intentionally steered clear of Elden Ring's PC version. Was pretty disappointed in it and played on PS5. Zero regrets. Silky smooth.
And for me, I mean, if you got a PlayStation 5, you're picking up exclusives. That's why you got the PS5. You're there for the exclusives. And I know that a lot of people can be intimidated by the Soulsborne games, but Elden Ring is approachable. Like I know Dono was one of the first ones that you fully sunk a lot of time into, and you know, you echoed that sentiment of, hey, I actually feel comfortable going through this. And Bill, it was your full first one, I think, as well. And I think that speaks
I
volumes to
played
the
1
game.
hour of Dark Souls 3 before Elden Ring. That was my Souls experience. So no, there's a few other things like that, but no, yeah,
But
it
you
was the
clocked
first
Elden
one.
Ring. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there's another shout out to Elden Ring. I'm sure it's going to get a lot of shout outs during this whole production. But I think we had 1 or 2 more nominations, quite possibly. Let me pull up the sheet here. Best PS5 game.
Who wants to talk about God of War?
Yeah.
I mean, it's the only reason why I said Elden Ring here is because I knew other people would also want to talk about God of War. So it's just like, here we go.
Oh man. Yeah, who wants to talk about God of War? Sam?
Why don't you do it? Did you nominate it, Ozzy?
Ozzy?
Oh, have we lost Ozzy?
Oh, we might have lost Ozzy.
I
Ozzy's-
think he's frozen. Yeah.
So happy.
I thought he was just stoically staring at me. I thought he was, yeah.
Ozzy has entered the danger
He's
zone.
just staring at me. There we go.
Ozzy.
He's back.
My
He's back.
internet's
He's back.
going in and out, and
There he is.
so what I was saying was I'm not as far into God of War as I.
Oh!
What?
Oh!
Right there.
All right, that's ominous for God of War.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Oh no!
It's
Sony
the
pulled the
Horizon
plug on him.
Midwest voters.
Anything
trying to
can
silence him.
happen. That drama. We're bringing the courtroom drama today. I love it.
Sam,
It's
as someone who's beaten it, why don't you talk about
I would
God of
love
War?
to. I don't want to steal too much of the mic time from people who want to, you know, like, don't know if you want to talk about it as well, by all means.
No.
But
Good, you got
for
it.
me, first of all, the gameplay in God of War, I love it. I love the visceral combat. I love how powerful Kratos feels and yet light on his feet. I love how the Leviathan axe comes into play, and then the Blades of Chaos, and you've got the two elements working together, and you're just like ripping things apart. I feel powerful. But then on the narrative side, for anyone, you know, whether you've got like a good relationship with your father or a bad relationship with your father, no relationship, or a relationship with like a parental or authority figure, I think that the very personal story in God of War Ragnarok can speak volumes. It was quite emotional to watch Kratos come to the realization that Atreus is no longer just his boy. Atreus is a growing individual who has his own motivations, who has his own thoughts, and it's no longer just Kratos being like, "We're going here, we're doing that." He now has to listen to Atreus out of fear of, you know, you don't want to push away your child. You don't want to. If he's dead set on his own path, and Mimir says this to him early in the game, he's like, Kratos, if Atreus is going on his own path, you can either go with him or lose him. Like, those are really your only two options. And watching Kratos wrestle with this throughout the whole thing, there were moments where I was literally like, you know, I had tears in my eyes. I was so emotionally moved by Christopher Judge's performance in this and Sonny's performance. Just seeing them together, oh, it was, you know, if you can take the time to play through the story, it is a phenomenal period on the end of the Norse saga here. Like it was the perfect conclusion to those duo of games.
And I like to think I'm like several hours into the game. Kratos does not call him boy at any point, does he?
They scaled it down. I think that he called him so much in the first game. They're like, we can't keep doing that. Like
Because he was a boy in
But
the first game.
he was a boy.
It was.
He's a teenage kid now. Like a lot of time has passed.
There's a respect that's changed there, and he's no longer just a boy.
He's trained. He can fight.
So it's less about them avoiding saying boy because it's become a meme essentially, and it's more about the evolution of the story.
It's
Yeah.
I
think it contributes to they said it too much in the 2018 game. Like it was a little overly done in that game. Like he said,
well, no,
every
like
sentence.
he in the first game, he was a kid who didn't know what he was getting into. He had never really gotten into a violent conflict before. The first game starts out with you teaching him how to hunt. And in this second game, he's been to the 9 realms. He's been to Muspelheim. So like at that point, he knows what he's getting into. He knows how to fight. He's seen the violence. So, you know, he's really not a boy anymore by the time you get to Ragnarok.
And all this story is set to the dramatic backdrop of Ragnarok, the ultimate war in the mythology. And to have something so grand and sweeping as to be like a world-changing dramatic event, and to have this just really personal and genuine storyline between a father and son, a parent and a child, you know, an authority figure and a minor, like it was heartwarming to see that through to the very end.
So you're saying God of War Ragnarok is kind of like an episode of Full House?
Oh, if you want to go in that direction, maybe
like
the opening credits.
Kratos is Danny Tanner, and
this is the only time you ever hear Kratos compared to Danny Tanner.
Yeah. Kratos is Danny Tanner, and Atreus is DJ. There you go.
I did like in Ragnarok how easy it is to segue into the side quests. Like they make it so seamless that it's like, okay, you can go down the main path, but you know, if you want to go this way, like it does kind of relate to your main quest in this manner, and you know, you'd be doing me a solid. And like I do like the way that they structured the way the side quests are put together.
Yeah, and I found it not too overwhelming. Like it's not a strictly open world game. It's, you know, you got the realms that you can go to and kind of explore, and they're all kind of like reasonably sized, but not so gargantuan that you're kind of like, well, I'm just so overwhelmed. There's too many things on the map. What's going on here? It's just you can follow the story pretty well, and
like they're organically placed. Is what I would say.
And I feel like the problem. I don't really play a lot of God of War games. I played Ragnarok, and I found like the way that a lot of the stuff is acted, like the Norse gods, like the dialect, their delivery, like everything about like the character, like mannerisms and stuff, like really took me out of it. Like it felt like Odin felt like Paul Giamatti, like was doing like his best De Niro impression or something. You know,
I love Thor.
That was great. Oh,
Thor is great.
I guess that's got to be really subjective, because I thought
it is subjective. This whole thing is subjective.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't know. It just like it really was just like, wait, like what the hell is this? I don't know.
Like they're not these like. Sorry.
No, I was gonna say like they made Thor into the perfect boorish brute. Like,
oh my gosh, so good.
He's so fantastic, so intimidating.
The first fight with Odin's just like, don't take too long, and then Thor, like you're finally like you get to like God of War versus Thor. that fight and just all the delivery between the characters is one of my favorite moments in games this year. Like, it's so good. And it's also like, as a God of War fan since the first game back on PS2, that was the first time that I really felt Kratos pushed. Like, it wasn't just me as a player. Like, it's early in the game, you're still kind of getting the hang of the combat. You don't have the swords of chaos yet, I believe. But like, I'm like, man, Thor is like really pushing me here. I kind of felt that as a character. And I didn't know how TJ felt about this, because TJ and I are both and Ozzy as well, fighting game fans. But like, when I got the swords of chaos and was able to add Atreus into the mix, I feel like I was playing a great fighting game. Like, I was doing some sick juggle combos, like swapping between weapons, having Atreus like pop enemies high into the air with arrows. I was like, oh, I'm going for like an ultra combo here. Like, it felt really good to just juggle enemies and just beat the tar out of it.
There's something. Sorry, TJ, go ahead.
It's like the weightiest version of Devil May Cry, where everything feels thick and hits hard, and you're still doing stuff like just knocking, like exploding the ground to knock people up in the air, having Atreus shoot arrows at them while they're in the air. Then you throw the axe in an orbiting fashion and start wailing on them with your punches. It's just it's a cavalcade of violence.
Was it Uncharted 4 that came out on the PS4, Thief's End? Is that right? There was 4, right?
Yeah.
There was something about that game that reminds me of God of War, because you can play Uncharted and you cannot really invest heavily into the moveset and the combos and the climbing and the moving and everything else. And you can get by just fine. It works, right? Like, you don't have to be very detailed with it. But if you invest time and effort and with purpose into the combat, you can do some incredible things in Uncharted. And that was very similar for me in both God of War 2018 and this one. Is that, that's, you can just hit things with your axe. That's fine. Like, you can get by. But to David's point, if you actually take the time to really invest and like put it together, you can do some really incredible things with it. And I thought that's same thing we say, easy to pick up, hard to master.
It's a synthesis of Devil May Cry and Souls combat. Like, it has the weight of Souls combat with the kind of flexibility of a very dynamic combat system from character action games like Bayonetta and Devil May Cry.
It's more forgiving, I think, than like the Soulsborne type of games, though.
Yeah.
Sure. Oh, yeah. It would have to be, because that's like Souls is the point where like every strike counts. That's not really the case with God of War. But the specific comparison I'm making, Blake, is Souls weapons have a lot of weight behind them, and I feel like that's the case in God of War. And that's a really, like, combining that with the like frenetic fluidity of a traditional God of War game or Devil May Cry is no mean feat, because they could really, like, those moves could look like there's no weight or impact behind them, but that's not the case. It is fluid and weighty, and that's a really tough line to walk, I would say.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And like, I think one of the things that stands out the most to me in God of War Ragnarok is the sheer amount of philosophy and contention as you go through every part of the game. You've got Thor on one end, who doesn't give even a single shit about his kids, doesn't care at all. He lives for the fight, he lives for the kill, he lives to go to the next thing. He lives to drink and punch. And he sees this, and he sees a kindred spirit in Kratos, where he wants Kratos to give him everything he's got.
There's respect there. Yeah.
He wants Kratos to punch him as hard as possible so he can punch Kratos as hard as possible. And that is like, he's inviting Kratos to give up this dad act and be like him. And on the other end of this spectrum, you have Freya, who loved, like, this is established at this point. She loved her kids so much that the thing that took him away from her is her enemy, no matter what. It doesn't matter what the reason was. And that is a case of she loved that kid too much, to the point where, like, it is now a weapon between her and Kratos. And then you've got Atreus himself, who Kratos now understands has got Latin god ability in him, and he doesn't know how far that well goes. And so just like the sheer amount of fear and insecurity and giving up on nature versus nurture at play in this game is makes for such an incredible tug of war narrative on so many characters' parts.
Yeah. If I could just talk to the technical side of it, the fact that the entire game is in the cinematics is one shot as well. You follow from character to character, no cuts between shots, no cuts between scenes, and how they pull that off with some of the other scenes later in the game is it's quite clever, and it's a certainly a unique way of presenting a story, and one that you never feel like you're taken out of it. You're there no matter what.
I appreciated that part of it, but at the same time, I hated. There were multiple times where I was in the middle of a battle or doing something, and I would just get immediately taken away control of my character and have to watch a cutscene. And I'm like, what? There's even a battle where like I was doing very well, but I'm scripted to lose, so it forced me to lose and then to show a cutscene and then go back into the battle. And I was like, what? I was like, stop.
Those are narrative beats. You might not like them, but
I know. I just like the Resident Evil 3 does it too. Like, to be fair, but like it doesn't feel like it happens as often. Like it just like it's so seamlessly, just kind of jarring at times, just at times.
Sure, I think it definitely depends, but I was going to piggyback on what Sam said. I'm a big fan of Kara Ellison's writing. She was a games journalist before she went into narrative design, and she's one of the narrative designers at Santa Monica Studios. And one person on Twitter was kind of bemoaning all of the like crevices that Kratos and Atreus have to push through, and they're like, "Oh, it's just I think even journalists were saying this, which kind of shows how ill-informed some journalists can be. They were just saying like, "Oh, this is just to mask loading the next area." She's like, "No, dude, the area is there. This is narrative pacing. We're taking a moment to like kind of shimmy through when Kratos and Atreus are emotionally and physically close together, and have some narrative beats happen there. It's about pacing in the narrative, which is critical in a game like God of War, which has its roots in like just like blisteringly fast combat. And so just the way that they, the pacing in this game's narrative is just sublime. It's fantastic.
Cool. Well, with that said, I think it's time we get down to the voting. All right. Morgan, let's start with you. Where is your vote going?
I'm gonna stick with Horizon Forbidden West.
All right, that is one for Horizon Forbidden West. Ozzy,
God of War.
God of War, Ragnarok. TJ?
There's so many good games this year, and every one of these games we talked about are so incredibly good.
It's ridiculous.
Four bangers in this category for sure.
I'm gonna.
Do you need a minute?
I'm gonna stay on Horizon because there's so many things you can do in that game, and pulling off an open world that doesn't bore me is like a feat to me. I love being in that world, and I love exploring.
All right, there you go. What a twist! I really thought you'd go with God of War, but
I was real close.
Greg Burkleton Burke, where is your vote going?
I've played both games like recently, so it's good. But like Bill made a lot of good points about Forbidden West. Like I think God of War has like more cinematic elements, which is great. But gameplay wise, I got to give it to Forbidden West. I think it's a little better.
There you go, Donovan.
Go with God of War Ragnarok.
Ragnarok. David O'Craddock, what you going for?
It's a testament to all the great games this year, but I think I'm going to stick with The Last of Us Part 1. I would still put it up against any of these others, and they're just all phenomenal.
Wow, honest, man, and Elden Ring isn't getting all your votes, David, and it shocks me a little bit, but I know that you're more than just Elden Ring, so...
I am. I've got multiple horses in these races.
Yeah, I'm gonna vote for Horizon Forbidden West. It's just environmentally, it feels more to me. It's more my style of game overall, especially with the sci-fi aspects of it. And give me more games that take place in the Bay Area. And for the love of God, it's cool to go to Oakland. Oakland is way cooler than San Francisco. Game developers, if you're paying attention. Just saying. Sam.
God of War Ragnarok.
God of War Ragnarok for Sam. Bill Lavoie. I'm guessing. I think I know what you're going to vote for, but I'm going to let you say it because this is your vote.
Well, how will we know if you know then?
Oh, I think you're going to vote for Horizon Forbidden West.
I am. I'm sticking with it. Yeah, absolutely. I'm voting for Horizon Forbidden West. And I think we have a couple other votes to tally too, don't we?
Yeah, we do have a couple more votes to tally. The one and only Asif Khan also votes for Horizon Forbidden West. Good on him for that. And then let's see, what do we got for Denny? Denny voted for God of War. So that's another one for God of War. And let's see, where did
Steve voted for God of War?
Steve voted for God of War as well. Well, it doesn't look. It looks like, by one vote, Horizon Forbidden West is taking home the title of Best PS5 Game of 2022. The gavel is spoken.